Hello there, and welcome to Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm here with my father, Dr. Kaplan. We're going to be reading through the books of the law, Genesis through Deuteronomy, over the course of this year, a little bit every day. Today, we are reading Genesis 24:53 through 67. We're going to read it from the Robert Alter translation, and then we're going to talk about what we have read. And the servants took out ornaments of silver and ornaments of gold and garments and he gave them to Rebekah, and he gave presents to her brother and her mother. And they ate and drank, he and the men who were with him, and they spent the night and rose in the morning. And he said, Send me off, that I may go to my master. And her brother and her mother said, Let the young woman stay with us 10 days or so, then she may go. And he said to them, Do not hold me back when the Lord has granted success to my journey. Send me off, that I may go to my master. And they said, Let us call the young woman and ask for her answer. And they called Rebekah and said to her, Will you go with this man? And she said, I will. And they sent off Rebekah their sister and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, Our sister, become hence myriads teeming. May your seed take hold of the gate of its foes. And Rebekah rose with her young women, and they mounted the camels and went after the man, and the servant took Rebekah and went off. And Isaac had come from the approach to Beer Lahai Roi as he was dwelling in the Negev region. And Isaac went out to stroll in the field toward evening, and he raised his eyes and saw, and look, camels were coming. And Rebekah raised her eyes and saw Isaac, and she alighted from the camel. And she said to the servant, Who is that man walking through the field toward us? And the servant said, He is my master. And she took her veil and covered her face. And the servant recounted to Isaac all the things he had done. And Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother, and took Rebekah as wife. And he loved her, and Isaac was consoled after his mother's death. So we have the dramatic conclusion of the finding of Rebekah. The first thing that comes to mind here is obviously there's all these gifts given, and then they have a little celebration, and he spends the night, and then he wants to get going. And what they say is, well, no, let's stick around and everything. And I'm kind of wondering, what do you think? Why do you think this little detail is there?
I think they thought they could get more out of him. That's my feeling. Or also they also were maybe reluctant to let Rebecca go because for one thing she was evidently very active in helping out. Um, but so when I think maybe they were surprised and she was so eager to leave. But later on in the New Testament, this is brought out her faith in being willing to go to marry Isaac. She hadn't met him, but she understood this was of God, and she and on faith she married Isaac, and this is in a way a type of Christ in the church. We have a certain faith as we come to a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. The church collectively is the bride of Christ.
And I have some more to say about that a little bit later. But but the one thing that's interesting too is though is the 10 days, right? Because 10 you immediately think of like the 10 commandments and things like that. So that's kind of an interesting number to throw out there, specifically 10, not a week, 10. It's just kind of interesting. I found that interesting. Um, but yes, they do actually ask her whether or not she wants to go with them, which is a fair amount of agency, I would think, for the era, and certainly a sign of respecting the woman's right to involve herself in the situation. Sometimes, because of the era that the Bible was written in and the focus, the Bible can come across a little misogynistic or maybe sexist or something like that. But here you do have the example specifically of them asking her, and you can tell she is a willing participant. To my dad's point, she sees. She heard he can hear the story. She knew it happened, and she could assume, just like the servant did, that this was a divine appointment, and so therefore, yeah. And it could be that where she was coming from was not such a great place for her, that there would be another reason to go as well.
How does Alter translate 59? Uh, that Rebecca goes uh, The New King James says her nurse. How does Alter handle that?
It says her nurse.
So maybe this was an older woman who had that kind of relationship with her when she was younger. Maybe not a lot older, but old enough to have been to maybe have nursed her. Uh, but now she's a kind of servant woman or caretaker, whatever. She goes along. Her name is Deborah, and her death is recorded later. So it's interesting that that she's a person in the Bible that you see mentioned here, not by name, but later on she's named. What they say about her is about Rebecca is very important. You can see this also in the case when Ruth marries Boaz. They had a sense of the significance of this marriage, and the future significance. Uh, and it's kind of like in America, when the nation was founded, those who were involved had the sense that they were doing something very significant, that they were establishing a nation, and they in effect projected into the future. And here we have, Rebecca's family putting a great deal of significance on this marriage. And as I said, we have a similar language regarding Ruth and Boaz later on.
And again, it points to why she might have been willing to go with it as well, because there was certainly a gravity to the situation that others saw. So there would be a reason potentially why she would be like, oh, okay, well, like I said, this is some divine appointment. I should go with it because I'm a believer in God as well. I do love the beautiful literature later on where you have Isaac is strolling out and she doesn't know who he is, and then she explains. But to get to what my dad was talking about in terms of the relationship between us and God, you can look at this as a nice little allegory because we have the strolling in the field towards evening, which is a parallel to the Garden of Eden, right? God is walking in the evening. And then immediately, as soon as she knows who he is, what does she do? She hides herself. She veils herself, much like Adam and Eve hid themselves from God. Now, I think in the purposes of the story, I think this is dealing with modesty, customs about wedding, but just the typology is really beautiful as well, I think.
Yeah, I guess when at a formal meeting of a future groom, evidently this was the etiquette uh, at the time. Uh, and it's interesting too that it says, and Isaac went out to meditate in the field. The word is also could be translated to converse. And does Alter say meditate or does he say pray in verse 63?
Stroll.
Stroll. Went out to stroll in the field. That's what he says.
Yeah, he has a note about it. He says this translation produces one current guess, but the verb only occurs here, and no one is actually sure what it means.
Okay, well, it seems to be related to the concept of conversing. So some people believe in, well, I guess it's like talking to yourself or meditating, and traditionally the Jews thought of this as prayer, that he was praying, and they actually, the Orthodox Jews teach that Isaac institutes the afternoon prayer because it's toward evening, and let me see what, yeah, it's like at the opening of the evening, uh, or the turning of the evening. So in their mind, it's not yet really dark. It's kind of late in the day, but it's still afternoon. So they believe that
Excuse me.
Isaac instituted the concept of an afternoon prayer. I think, of course, that's going beyond the text, but he was possibly praying, possibly meditating. On the other hand, Robert Alter decides that they were kind of off base, and he has strolled there. So I guess that's something for further analysis. Now it's interesting too that the relationship, he took her and she became his wife and he loved her. So over time, the relationship, grew and he loved her. That's important.
Well, I think the timing there is to tell you a couple of things that obviously you can grow into love. It's not like a love at first sight necessarily situation, but also just that they probably would have gone through whatever ceremony, consummation, all of that before they really even knew each other on some sort of deep, intimate level that you could call love. And but that did in fact happen. Now, what I think is interesting is the fact that you have Sarah looming over that verse, right? Because it says the tent of Sarah's mother, and he was consoled after his mother's death. So that shows a closeness that Isaac had with his mother that his wife helped him deal with, which is interesting because often in our modern culture when you hear of like a mama's boy or something you think of maybe a weaker person, or it's a bit feminine or something like that, and people like to really rag on that, but this is definitely an example of somebody who has a very close relationship to his mother and is not viewed, in my opinion, in the narrative like that at all. It's viewed very positive, and the transition from loving his mother to having a normalized sexual relationship with his wife is no problem. It just segues through. This is not like an Oedipus complex sort of situation. So it's just important, I think, sometimes because like I said, I think nowadays people can overdo that like concern sometimes. I know people that talk about such things.
It also would show the greatness of Sarah, to had that he had that kind of relationship. Um, there was something else that had come to mind, um, and somehow it's not no longer there. It'll probably come out after after we read further on. Um, but anyway, I'll leave it at that. That, as I said, the relationship he had with Sarah, as I said, to some degree, of course, it's to his credit, but also I would say also say to her credit. Okay, now it's back. I remember what I wanted to say. You see here that he married her. He took her into his tent. It basically, two families make an arrangement. It's public. People know about it. It's formalized, but you don't have to. There is no marriage liturgy in the Bible, or there is no, concept you have to have a cleric, or to do it, or whatever. It's basically an arrangement between families and between two individuals, and yet it needs to be made public and solemnized, formalized, because the Bible certainly forbids fornication. But at the same time, uh, we have, in a way, the various religious systems, various organized religions have, in a way, complicated it in a sense, uh, beyond what the Bible requires, in my opinion.
Right. And just for clarification, that doesn't mean my dad is anti-ceremonial weddings. He all
No, I have performed weddings, including Daniel's.
But I think what he's trying to get at is, let's imagine, you will, a scenario where for whatever reason it's just very difficult. Maybe, you can't work it out, or you just want to hastily, seal the deal. Well, to my dad's point, that what matters is the commitment has been made, that it's publicly acknowledged, and that you're taking it seriously as individuals. It's not really about the pageantry or the ceremony or anything like that. All right, so that being said, there will be more tomorrow. And if you want to check it out, if you want to make sure you don't miss any future episodes of Wake Up to the Bible, like, subscribe, hit the bell, and please share with your friends because, we can all read through the law together. It's certainly going to be a lot of fun and very interesting. And also comment below, if you have any questions. Did we get anything? Did we miss anything? Is there anything that you'd like more clarity on? Well, just let us know. And you can always read ahead, anything from Genesis to Deuteronomy. If you're in Deuteronomy, well, we might just put it aside and wait till we get there, but we would love to have those comments to talk about. So please do so, and we will see you tomorrow.